Hello and welcome to another Wednesday night of Mind to Mind. My name is Evelyn Jerry.
I'm Dan Claiborn. We're so happy to be back. We had to skip a week because of some technical difficulties, but now we're back and we'll be on our regular every other Wednesday evening schedule. And today is one of our favorite topics, has to do with friendship, what that means and what our experience of friendship is. So we're very excited. And once more, we would like to remind you, you can ask questions during the program or in between our programs, or if you have suggestions about other topics for later, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. You can find this program live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and also on Twitter. So don't hesitate to ask us any questions. And our topic of the day is friendship. And tell us on the comment section, what does friendship mean to you? How many friends do you have? Have you experienced any difficulties in friendship? What is the one thing, what is your deal breaker about friendship? And what is the one thing you look for in a friend?
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
The research in our country indicates that generally people have 4 or 5 close friends, and then another 5 or so medium close friends, and then another group of many acquaintances. And the research also shows here in our country, the United States, that about 40% of our social time is with those 4 or 5 close friends. So they really give us a lot of our social get a lot of our social needs met with those 4 people. The other interesting statistic that I found looking at the research for this program was that the research indicates that this social network we have reduces our chance of death by 50%. It's a bigger contributor to staying alive than even quitting smoking would be. So it's very important, not just to our mental and emotional well-being, but also to our physical health, apparently, which I didn't realize, but I was struck by that figure, 50% less mortality rates with people who have a circle of friends.
Wow, that's huge. And I'm just wondering, like, how seriously do you take my friendships? I think I'll take them a little bit more seriously now that I know the figures. Yeah.
Yeah. Evelyn was asking, we had a discussion before we started the program today, and Evelyn was bringing up several really interesting points. What were they? One was about how friendships can change over time. Somebody could be a close friend at some point in time, and then we and they both evolve and change, or maybe to different locations, or so friendships sometimes can come and go, and other ones are forever. What were you thinking about that, Evelyn?
I think I've experienced the loss of friendships like in different stages of my life, and it used to be so heartbreaking. And I wouldn't understand, like, why would someone be in my life for 1 minute and then the next minute they're not, like we are strangers now. And I've experienced, like, in different stages of my life, even growing up when I was young, experience. Like maybe I created a small friendship with one of my classmates, and we can hang out for like a week. Then the next week, she's no longer talking to me, and then they'll use maybe the information that maybe we exchanged during our conversations and use that to bully me with other girls, and I will be so devastated.
Hmm.
So I kind of longed and yearned for that the desire to have friends, like real friends and all that. And I have also built like long-term friendships. But another thing I've experienced is that like when we get to certain levels of our lives, maybe like we were friends since high school, and then now later on after university, and now people have started working and everything, you find like now you lose that friendship. And maybe like I think it was just a seasonal friendship, and it's not like we hurt each other or anything. It was more of a like we're in different seasons and we're different people now, and maybe our friendships are not serving each other. I really do not understand how you can love me 1 minute and then the next minute like you don't want me in your life. I used to struggle with that, and I think I have mourned friendships more than I have mourned any romantic relationship.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and I think I came to understand the whole different seasons. Like there are people who are meant to be in your life for a short period of time, others for a certain period of time, and then now they no longer serve the I think they are different people. Some friends end up in different locations where you can't be with each other anymore, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, and you just fall out.
Uh-huh. Yes, I think some of our friends that we had when we were very young, and we maybe years go by without having contact, and then we get
Mm,
together somehow, and sometimes it's just as though no time has passed, and that we're
yeah.
just as good of friends as we were before. And other times, if people drift apart, they lose that common experience, and they may see each other again at some later point, but that original close connection doesn't happen again. So it's
Yeah.
different with different people. There's a theory that I have that when we are born, we have a family of our own that we're born
Mm,
into, but that as we grow up, particularly in our 20s and beyond, we're collecting new family, new people to be the close people in our lives that will be there for the rest of our lives. Sometimes they call that our chosen family. And some people from our original family may be in our eventual chosen family, but others
mhm,
may not make it into that new family. And I've experienced that in my life. That as I've gone through life, occasionally I run into someone and become acquainted with someone that is so good for me in some way or other that I decide to keep them, so to speak, and make them a member of my new family. That they don't know that necessarily, but I think of it in my mind that way.
mhm,
Sometimes they're a neighbor that I might have had, or um, a, a doctor, or a teacher, or somebody I was working with in a certain place. They could come from anywhere, and if they just seem to have a certain a helpful kind of ingredients of friendship, which we'll talk about in a minute, then they're worth keeping, and they're worth staying in contact with. And
mhm,
today, as Evelyn and I were talking about earlier, there are so many more ways to stay in contact than there used to be when I was a child growing up.
mhm.
Basically, when I was a child growing up, we could write letters or we could make telephone calls. But the telephone calls, if they were long distance, were expensive. So there really
Yeah.
weren't very many ways to stay in touch. But now, of course, with Facebook and texting and cell phones, and it's much easier to stay in some kind of contact.
Yeah. Nowadays, you can even FaceTime someone. Like it will be like they're still around because you can see their face.
Uh-huh.
You can see. yeah, you can talk to each other. You can even show them what you're doing. You can apparently another friend of mine told me there's a virtual way of watching a movie with someone. Like you can be in the US and I can be here, and I can share certain link. I will ask. I meant to ask what there's an app where I can share a link
Hmm.
where we can watch a movie together when you're away and I'm here. So there are so many activities we can do together. People play video games where they're talking to each other directly.
Yes.
There's so many ways of even having fun with your friend even when they're away. So yeah.
We have an outline, and I think Evelyn provided that to you. And I just wanted to mention one thing on the outline is a book that just came out last year. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's called Why We Love, and it's
Mm-hmm.
by a woman named Anna Manchin. And she
Mm-hmm.
talks about the different kinds of love relationships: lovers, family, children, God, um, our pets, celebrities, objects we love, and friends. So there are many categories. But other than our lovers and our parents and children, friends seem to be the next most important of all those
Mm-hmm.
love relationships that we have. Uh,
Yeah.
so that I haven't read that book myself. I just saw a summary of it. But if anybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to look for it, it just was published in 2022, and it's called Why We Love. But she focuses a lot on that book, apparently, on friendship.
Mm. Friends are they're really important in our lives because you see, there's certain seasons in your life that maybe one of them has experienced, but you haven't, and no one else in your family has experienced it. And there are certain valuable experiences that they will offer you that not even your spouse can offer you.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we give too much pressure on maybe like family and even like our spouses that are roles that are supposed to be played by friends.
Hmm. When I do counseling with couples that are having some difficulties, I really encourage each of them separately to stay in contact with their friends. Sometimes when people have marriage problems or any other kinds of problems, health problems or whatever, they tend to become more isolated and pull within themselves while they're going through
Mhm.
something. And that's the very time that they ought to lean on their friends more and not lose contact with their friends. And especially, let's say couples are going through a divorce. I really encourage them to reach out to their friends, let them know what's happening. Don't let those relationships go just because you're having some other problem. Friends can be so helpful, and they can give us things that our love relationship can't give us. I mean, a lot of times we're in love with someone and we're married to that person, let's say, and that we consider them a friend, maybe even our best friend, but
Yeah,
they can't give us everything our
yeah,
friends can give us. So we really need both. And the other thing
yeah.
you mentioned, Evelyn, that I thought was really important is that a lot of times we make these friends by sharing a common experience, like
Mhm.
being in school together, or playing on the same team, or being in the military together, or it could be anything. And you go through, especially any kind of a stressful experience along with someone else, then it becomes a shared life experience. And those kinds of things really pull friends together for life sometimes.
Yeah. And I think also, I think I would like to insist on what you've just said about sometimes when people start experiencing hardship in life, especially like life has challenges. So you find, to be honest, like, some of my friendships actually started. they ended because of the drifting away. You find like someone is drifting away because they're going through a certain challenge in their lives. You try to offer being there, you try to reach out, they don't want to contact you, and just like that, like they end up like completely cutting you off of their lives. And
Mhm.
I used to find like now it becomes really hard now way later, like maybe it's been 2 3 years since someone talked to you. You guys
Mhm.
used to talk every day, and you found a way to move on because you know you can't also force someone to be in your life. So when someone reaches out now again, it becomes really hard to now rebuild that friendship because it cannot create like lack of trust, because you wonder when now what happens when another challenge pops up. Are you going to leave me, and am I going to be completely cut off of your life? And like you said, some of our friends are like family, so it's like a sister or a brother like not talking to you for a very long period of time, and you knowing there's something going on in their lives, and now they're cutting you off. You don't know how it, like what's going on in their lives and everything. It becomes very hurtful because you know there's someone you care about, and you wonder like how exactly like it becomes very painful to watch someone suffer, someone that is close to you. You may not have the solutions to their problem, but you would like to be there for them, and for them to know that you're there to talk to, like in case they need to vent or something.
Yeah, I think when somebody is going through a crisis and you know about it, it's good to reach out to them. And sometimes they are they welcome it and are very appreciative. So, but if they need their space and they do not respond well, I think give them that space.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just go through changes in life and they just don't have the space for our friendship anymore. And we have to
Mm-hmm.
accept that and focus on the friends we do have. It does make us, when we have been abandoned by a friend or they've moved on away from us, it does make us skeptical and more guarded about new friendships. But usually it's just something about their life and their circumstances, and it isn't something we have done. And so I think
Yeah.
we need to keep adding friends as we go along. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know even now, I'm 76 years old, and I have a group of friends. We have lunch and we keep in touch, and it's just as valuable now as it was when I was in middle age, or when I
Mm-hmm.
was in college, or when I was in childhood. I mean, they're very important. Um,
Yeah.
Things that bring people together. We mentioned shared experiences, but there are other things like trust. You know, if you found that some way or other that a person can be trusted, that's an element of friendship. Another element
Yeah.
is just simply liking a person. There's some people
Mm-hmm.
who just like, and so that's an ingredient of
Mm-hmm.
friendship. Common
Yeah.
experiences, um, common interests. It's interesting when they do research on how to predict which marriages will last. One
Mm-hmm.
of the best predictors is, do the people have some interests in common? Not all their interests in common, but if they have very few or no interests that are shared, their prediction of that relationship lasting is very poor. So
Mm-hmm.
interest, even though that seems shallow, turns out to be one of the best predictors of lasting friendship and lasting relationships. So there are different ingredients. If you think of it as a recipe, there are different
Yeah.
ingredients that make up our friendships.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting topic because it's very. How about how does someone move on like from like the betrayal or feeling betrayed that someone completely cut them off, not because they did anything, but because they're in a different phase of their lives and they've
Hmm.
decided. like they no longer need you? Like, how would you advise someone who is maybe going through that pain right now?
Well, first of all, I'd like them to see if they can find out what happened. Sometimes if they ask the other person, they won't get a response, but sometimes they might. The other thing I usually advise is to talk to my other friends and tell them
Mhm.
what's happened with this particular friend and see if they have any insights, because sometimes they're a friend of that person also. So they know
Mhm.
that person, and it just helps to be able to talk this out with another friend who's listening and trying to understand just kind of how you feel, what's happened, uh, what you don't understand about it. And in some rare cases, you may never understand what happened. But I think
Yeah.
in many cases, you can have a theory or you can figure out what might likely have happened. Uh, that gives us some sense of closure when
Mhm.
we can figure that out or have a theory that we think might apply to what happened.
Yeah. All right. I think.
In my experience, when people have drifted away from me and I didn't understand it, and then
Mhm.
later at some point I do find out what happened, it almost always has something to do with the change in their life. It doesn't have to do with something I have done.
Yeah.
It's something that happened in their life. They had limited energy. They could not spend it everywhere with all of their contacts. So they decided to let some of their relationships go so that they could
Mhm.
concentrate on the problems at hand and the other relationships that they were focused on.
And does that make you does that enable you to, like, after finding out, and by the time like maybe they tell you about it years later, does it make you guys come back together and pick it up from where you left, or does it make it difficult?
Yeah, I have had that happen a few times where we were able to pick up and resume
Mm-hmm.
where we went off, and we cleared up a misunderstanding of some sort or found out what had happened in the other person's life. There are some times where there's no coming back together at all. And so
Mm-hmm.
as I've gotten older, what I try to do is I try to think of those relationships as being grateful for them while I had them, but realizing in life things change and nothing is permanent. And so I'm grateful for the relationships that do last, but I don't grieve over the ones that I've lost too much, because
Mm-hmm.
that's, if we make friends, we're going to lose some of them.
Yeah.
And it could be even to things like death or travel or uh, just something out of anyone's control. And so we're
Yeah.
going to lose some of our friendships. My class in high school that I went through high school with, in the summer, they meet once a month for lunch in my
Mm-hmm.
small hometown. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I've gone to those meetings, I look around the room and there are maybe 18, 17, 15 people there. And some of them I barely remember, and others I have been close with for all of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
it's it's not necessarily the ones that I'm close to now are the ones that I would have predicted I would be close to back when I was in high school. Um,
Yeah.
and some are. It's just very interesting the way our lives develop.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And that is so true because, like, I think right now I've been meeting people that maybe I went to school with that I never thought we'd be close, but now they end up being close and they're in my life. But maybe we never had a relationship in school. We were
Hmm.
just acquaintances. Like, I saw you, you saw me. I know we were in the same school, but
Hmm.
nothing. We didn't had anything in common. We never ended up in the same team or anything. Yeah.
One thing I read about in the research that I forgot to mention earlier is
Mm-hmm.
that they've done some studies where they bring people into the laboratory and they hook them up to do a scan of their brain activity while they're
Mm-hmm.
watching a video of some sort. And it
Mm-hmm.
turns out that friends have very similar brain activity when they're watching the same video as
Really?
opposed to two people that are not friends. And so what we don't know why, but there's something about finding, some people call it a soulmate, finding somebody that is very similar to you. And they could
Yeah.
come from a different family, different town, different social group, different tribe. But occasionally we run into people that just are very much like ourselves in terms of
Mhm.
values or sense of humor or the way they think about things or their political views or and it's almost like a twin. They're like somebody like they're like looking in the mirror. And when we
Wow.
find somebody like that, it's very special.
Yeah.
We try to
Yeah, it really is. I had another question. Like, this is a group dynamics kind of friendship. So, like, what if you have this whole group that is, we are friends as a group, but there are some people that you're close to than
mhm,
others. Then one of your close friends end up betraying you, but they are friends with everyone else, which makes the whole group dynamic so complicated. So
yes,
they still talk to these other people, but you don't talk to them because there was a whole betrayal and now you're no longer friends. And maybe like it's something that has is consistent to a certain level where you feel like you can no longer have this person in your life because they have caused you so much pain. And any situation that you have tried to reconcile or anything, they continue to hurt you. So you wonder, like, do I keep this person in my life so that the rest of the people cannot feel awkward and they don't, because they end up being hurt by our situation because they'll still talk because they were not maybe impacted directly, but um, there's certain awkwardness because now if we are going to an event or we go for a certain party or something, and maybe like I'm the one throwing it, I won't call this person, but they want to hang out with them, and it becomes awkward that they came but she didn't come. You understand? Like it becomes it has an impact on our group dynamic. Like how I don't know whether you understand. That's very complicated.
well, and I
How?
think in our culture anyway, this is much more complicated for girls and women.
Yeah.
When girls are going through, particularly, oh, their ages 13, 14, 15,
Mhm.
their social groups change. And the exact thing you just described happens often and frequently. And it's very disturbing and unsettling, but much
Mhm.
more often in the lives of girls than than boys in our culture. Um, I think that in a way, women are more social in their makeup and
Yeah.
in a good way, and social contacts are much more sophisticated and and tricky and complicated and all of their lives, but in particular in those middle teenage years, um, girls groups can sometimes be very cruel and
Mhm.
changeable. Whereas I
Yeah.
don't, in my work all these years with teenagers, I haven't found that to be the case very much with boys. Um,
Mm.
so that's one, as you were talking, I was thinking of that. Just many girls go through experiences like that in their teenage years. Um,
It's not in the teenage years. It happens even in our 20s where you
mhm,
find
good.
things.
Yes.
Because I think you're still becoming an adult and you're still discovering like what kind of people do you want in your life. And sometimes you find like with all these dynamics changing, you can find like maybe one of your friends, maybe things are easy for them in terms of like maybe it's easy for them to get a job, they got good grades, they went to good schools and all that. And then you find like maybe for one it's hard for them to have the same experience, they're having difficulties, because as much as we are friends, we come from different backgrounds and everything. So you find like it's maybe easier for one person, and if someone has low self-esteem, you'll find that there will be a lot of jealousy and pettiness
Hmm.
and yeah, betrayal and kind of trying to bring the person who is maybe succeeding down so that they can feel like they're in an equal level or something, because it feels like maybe like they are leaving them behind by
Hmm.
succeeding. So I think that kind of brings a lot of jealousy and
Yes.
envy.
Some people are
And
just luckier as life goes on, and
yeah,
and for other reasons they may take a path that turns out much better than another
mm,
friend. And
yeah,
the other thing I was thinking when you were talking, Evelyn, is sometimes there's one difference between two people that is so big that they can't overlook it or build their friendship around
yeah,
it. In our culture, in the last 20 years, there has been a lot of political fragmentation between people who
mm,
are more liberal and people who are more conservative. And it's
mhm,
been fueled by certain politicians and by the news media. And I know I have lost two or three friends in the past 10 years just because of radical political differences that just
yeah,
were too big to ignore. But I
mhm,
do have other friends where we have the same differences, but we've just both decided to live around it. So I have
mhm.
several friends that when we get together, we laugh and we remember our things from the past, but we don't talk about politics. And
Yeah,
we just go, and we both understand it, and neither
mhm,
one of us brings that up, and it seems to work fine. But
yeah,
I think I've read a lot about this too in the last 20 years, how many friendships and even family relationships have sometimes broken up over differences in politics. And I don't know whether that true in Kenya, but it definitely has been true in the United States.
it happens here as well because we were discussing it yesterday, and sometimes you find like if especially if you're in business, you can't go talking about this is who I support, this is what I support, like your political views. You have to kind of keep them away and let it be as secret as that secret ballot. Like, do not talk about who you're going to vote for, because you might end up even losing a client or something because you share a different political preference than them. And it's not just that in friendship you find that maybe sometimes maybe your friend becomes like gets a better job, they're able to buy a house, buy cars, or even get a spouse and get married, because sometimes that creates a difference in friendship because you can't behave the same way as you were when you were single. So you find like there will be some friends who will try and sabotage your relationship because they don't want you to be in a relationship because it will bring different dynamics in your friendship and they are not ready for it, you know.
I think one of the things you're alluding to is that as people grow up and evolve, they have different levels of maturity. And if
Mm,
people really mature equally and grow to a wiser level of maturity, they're willing to overlook differences. And one of
yeah.
the things that's nicest about really deep friendships is each person is aware of the flaws in the other person, but they accept them and overlook them and tolerate them. There's tolerance for
Hmm.
the flaws because everyone has flaws. And so,
Yeah.
really good friends in later life are people who know about the flaws of each other, but they like each other anyway. And they give
Mhm.
that feeling of acceptance of and
Mm.
tolerance of each other. And it's a very good feeling when you have that with someone.
Yeah, it is. And it's so rare. It's so rare to find someone who like is even happy when you're happy. Like
Mhm.
when nice things are happening to you, they are also supportive and happy. Like they may not be in the same situation as you, but they are supportive, they're there for you. And it's so rare to have with a friend.
Now, something else along these lines that it's in our outline too. Many years ago, I studied with a famous psychiatrist named Milton Erickson, who's written lots of books, and I studied with him in person for a period of time. And one thing he told me once was that there are 4 levels of love. The first level is the level of that toddlers have, young children, and that is I love me and I love my pleasure. I love me. And these 4 levels are all good, but they're as they go through them, they're more sophisticated. So the first level is I love me, my pleasure. Then the next level is more like what like elementary school children have, and that is I love things that are mine. I love my mom, my home, my bike, my dog, things that are mine, which is
Mm-hmm.
natural. And then the third level of love is what teenagers evolve to have, and that is what we call conditional love, where I love you as long as you do what I approve of, or as you do things the way I think you should do them. And then the fourth level is the most sophisticated level, and that is your happiness is my happiness. And so
Yeah.
that level means that if I know you're happy, that makes me happy, even if I'm not with you. And
Mm.
as people evolve, all 4 of these are good. And the complete mature person has all 4. So
Mm-hmm.
the complete mature person, they love themselves. They love things that they have that are theirs. They
Mm.
love other people, particularly if those people are doing what they approve of. But they
Mm-hmm.
also have level 4, which is your happiness is my happiness. Without that, and many adults only go up to level 3.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
for example, in my family, both of my parents are dead now, but in my family, my dad was capable of level 4. He was happy for me, even if I was doing something that he didn't understand, like
Oh,
becoming a psychologist. Um,
yeah.
but he knew it made me happy, therefore he was happy. But my
Mm-hmm.
mother only really was able to do level 3. She was only really happy for her children when they were doing what she thought they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something for all of us to think about, because sometimes, even if we have level 4, we don't express it all the time. And sometimes we lapse back into conditional love, or loving myself or my things. We can each is good in its own place, but
Yeah.
our best friends are the ones that have level 4, where they're happy for us even when we're doing something that is very strange and unfamiliar to them, that's something
Yeah.
they don't even know anything about, but they know it makes us happy, so therefore they're happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and it made me appreciate. Like, I think I have people who love me with level 4, and one
Uh-huh.
of them being mom, my best friend. I remember like there's a time, and especially during COVID when I was transitioning my career, she did not understand. Actually, both of them were going through the same thing. They did not understand, like, okay, what exactly do you want to do? How
Mhm.
exactly are you planning to do it? And why don't you do this? Because that's what I should logically do. But
Mhm.
I'm against it and I'm not doing it. But they're like, but don't you think you should do this? And then now, like the moment they realize I'm not backing off, they were like, okay, let's see how it goes. So now that I'm actually benefiting from some of the choices I made then, when they didn't understand, they're like, oh my gosh, you say that. Oh my gosh, now, and they're so happy, they're so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me. Like, they're so happy and so excited. Like,
Uh-huh.
I am living my passion and my dream with, even though they didn't understand it before, now they start to understand it and they're like,
Uh-huh.
I would have thought about that, and I'm so glad you didn't listen to me because now you're living your life within your passion and within your within your own rules, you know?
Yes. So that's a really good example.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens that somebody we think is our friend decides to fall in love and marry someone that we do not think is a very good choice.
Oh my God.
And we worry about our friend thinking that
Hmm.
they're making a mistake. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is a mistake and they eventually realize it. But sometimes, and I've had this happen a few times, they stay with that person and it
Hmm.
turns out in its own unique way to be a good fit that in some way I did not realize in the beginning. Um,
Hmm.
so I think one part of maturing is knowing when to withhold judgment and
Hmm.
be humble that we don't really know exactly what's right for everyone. So,
Yeah.
but I've had that happen a few times where a, a good friend has gotten into either a job or a relationship that I think is a mistake. And
Hmm.
even if I'm right and it is a mistake and does turn out to be a mistake, I have to let them understand it and figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
I've got to be careful about intruding too much because I might be wrong for one thing.
Yeah. I think I've experienced that as well. And it's so hard to watch someone, like, especially either be in a relationship with someone who is constantly, I don't know, like causing them pain, or they have to be someone different to make this person happy. And sometimes it's so difficult to find them like complain about the same thing about the
Right.
same person, you know?
I think if we have
But
a friend, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
when you like maybe you can give them your view about the situation and all that, but it seems like they're not they still want to be there. It gets to a point where you kind of have to like step back, and because you can't control someone out of a relationship, like that's their business. As
Right.
much as you love them and you want the best for them, at the end of the day, like they are the ones experiencing the relationship, and it's so difficult. Like you have to be on the sidelines and kind of let them make their own choice.
I think that's right. Sometimes that's very difficult because we don't want them to be hurt or
Mhm.
disappointed. We don't want them to be disappointed. Um,
Yeah.
but we have to be humble and realize that we don't really know what the right path is for other people. Our main
Hmm.
job is to try to figure out what the right path is for ourselves, which is challenging enough. Um,
Yeah.
now, one other benefit I think from friendship in the long run, and I'm speaking as an older person now, is
Mhm.
that there are certain things that come about in life, as you get older, that uh, health problems and the idea that death is coming and your life is, you only have a certain amount of time left. And if you have friends of a similar age going through similar kind of experiences, it's very nice to be able to talk to them about those things and see
Mhm.
how they feel and how they make sense of things and how
Yeah.
they are preparing themselves for being, let's say they have a disability or they lose a spouse who died, or they are retiring from their lifelong occupation, how they handle that. There's so
Mhm.
much we can learn from each other about
Yeah.
some of these things that we all go through in life in one way or another. And how does each person make sense of it and cope with it emotionally? It's very, very comforting to be able to talk to each other. I have a book club of 7 people. They're all my age. And when we get together, a lot of times the first few minutes, we all talk about our health problems. Each person says, well, I have this is what, and I went to the doctor, and then the next person, and the next. So after that, then we can talk about the book we're reading.
That is so good.
Uh-huh. Some people
Like
call.
I like that.
Mhm. I noticed in my parents when they got older, they went through a phase where they talked about other friends they had and the illnesses that the different friends had. And then after that, as they got even older, they talked about other people they knew who died.
Oh wow.
So I remember even then thinking and watching them do that. I thought to myself, well, when I get old, I don't want to talk about all the time about everybody I know who's died.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway,
I
friends
think
can,
it's
they're
nice
at
to
your
have a
level of
that lasts.
development. They can give a lot of support because they're going through something kind of like what you are in a different way. So
Yeah.
that's a really fun thing about friendship.
Yeah. I think it's also encouraging. Like the only thing I've seen maybe is like, for example, like when someone is newly married and maybe they have friends who are single, so now they kind of start creating friendships around married people. Or sometimes when they start having kids and they take them to school, they start becoming friends with the parents too, like other parents in the same school with their children, and they have play dates and all that because they have something
Hmm.
in common about like whatever they're discussing. And I think it sometimes you find like you can still have your close friends, they but still create friendships around the places that you are and the seasons that you are in your life.
That's right. I think one of the loneliest times in people's lives are after high school and before they have children, because that's when all the way through school we have ready-made companions and friends
Mhm.
and potential friends, and they're around us all the time, every day, the same
Yeah.
people. And when we have our own children, that puts us in contact with other parents. So that
Hmm.
brings us in contact with another group of people. But in between, we really have to either hang on to the old friendships we have or go out of our way to initiate new friendships. And we have to do that ourselves because,
Yeah.
other than maybe finding new friends at work, life doesn't really automatically give us all those friendship possibilities. Um, so that can be a lonelier time, like in our 20s, when we're not in school any longer, but don't have our own family, and we're not living with our
Exactly.
original family. And so it can be a little bit of a lonely time.
Yeah. I think I experienced that during COVID because I lost a lot of friends during COVID. And also now you're left with like you're also left with zero social events that you go to, like you can't go to church anymore. You can't, like all these places where you
Yeah.
can find, you can create friendships. There are no places you could go. And then I also lost some of my old friends because like I kind of started now evaluating like what kind of value do I want in my life, the kind of people I want in my life. And that's when like it was more like a screening process, and I learned that I had not been making very good decisions.
Oh,
Yeah, so
uh-huh.
was a period there when it was so lonely. And yeah, thank God, because thank God for the screening process, because by the time like it was over, I had already created like very, yeah, it was a small circle of friends, but we actually built it ourselves, and we really had to really work hard to be there for each other.
Uh-huh.
And it has been strong so far, and I like it because it's something that I've chosen, it's something I've created, and something that I am very conscious about. We were
I
not joined
think,
together for anything else.
right. I think that pandemic was very stressful on human beings for many different reasons. I mean, as
Yeah.
you're talking about, not being able to actually truly get together with friends, or and see some of them die or get really ill from the
Mm,
pandemic. Fortunately, we have social media, and we're able to Zoom and things that, if that had happened 30 or 40 years earlier, it would have been much more isolating. But still,
yeah.
I think, and not being able to go to school and see classmates in person or go to the
Mm,
workplace.
Yeah.
Many workplaces, as we all know, all the workers began to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
That was very stressful. And times like that, we need friends the most, and it might
Yeah.
make it difficult to have the time with them that we really need.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Oh, this has been really interesting
Mhm.
and very
Yes,
impressive.
I think friendships are one of the most important things we could ever talk about. And so I'm glad we did the program. And once again, if people have comments or other questions about the topic, um, please let us know. And many of the topics we talk about, we have articles that I have written for my one of my newspapers, and we can provide that if you want. But we're always open to new topics. And what were we talking about, Evelyn, earlier that we thought we might do next time?
We are going to be discussing about the impact of war and natural disasters on our mental health,
Oh,
especially this has been like we started discussing about what is going on in Israel and Palestine,
yes.
and even watch it on TV to see people die and being like
Mhm.
um they're being like pushed to leave their homes, or even some are being buried in
Uh,
buildings and that, and how stressful it can be on our mental health. And yeah, that's what we are planning to discuss
it's
next.
a very complicated topic. You know, there's a moral way to look at it, and then there's a political way, and then
Yeah,
there's a tactical way, and then
yeah,
there's the emotional way of impact. And there's so many
mm,
ways, and I think this will be a very interesting topic. And
yeah,
hopefully, even in the middle of our program next time, you can ask questions, and they will come to us, and we can see what your questions are, and
yeah,
that'll help us guide our discussion. So, yes, I'm very
yeah.
much looking forward to that. So that'll be 2 weeks from today.
Yeah. If you have any questions about like the impact of even natural disasters such as earthquakes, cyclones, like there's so many things that happen that are out of our control and they are sudden. And even just watching what is going on, the war between Ukraine
Yeah, it wouldn't have
and
to be just man-made things like war, but as Evelyn
mm,
has mentioned, yes, it could be earthquakes, forest fires like in Hawaii recently, or volcanoes. Or I mean, we're human beings are being challenged all the time around the
yeah,
world in various ways, and as Evelyn mentioned too, we're especially concerned about how that would affect children. So we'll
yeah.
want to talk about that too.
Yeah, or
Good.
even how to discuss it with your families. Like sometimes some people decide to like we will not watch it, it's not happening to us, so we won't watch it and will not discuss it.
Mhm.
But some people watch it and it brings out all these questions and distress and everything. But at the same time, like it is important to understand how that impacts your life, and if such a thing ever happens to you, like how you, like your mental state would actually impact how you survive or not, like
Right.
from such a situation. So that's
Yeah.
why it is important for all of us to discuss it.
And
Whether it
another
has to,
challenge we all have is how to be happy, even though we know other people are in terrible pain. Is it all
yeah,
right for me to be happy, even though I know what's happening in Israel? Or
yeah,
so that we all have to have a balance to kind of navigate achieving our own happiness when we can, even though
yeah,
we're aware. In this day, we see everything on television. So we're really aware of other people that are suffering. So, how do we do that? Anyway, this will be a very good topic.
yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. This has been amazing. In case
Uh-huh.
you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. And in case you have also any other topics that you'd like us to discuss, also don't mind sharing with us. My name is Evelyn Jerry, and I've been one of your hosts for Mind to Mind, and this is the Holistic Wellbeing with Evelyn Jerry.
We look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
So,
Bye
okay.
bye.